All right, so this is the video tutorial to do the text-based image, so the second part of the assignment. Okay, so what I want you to do, basically, you have a couple different options here. I'm going to do it this way. Let's create new, and we are going to go, I guess, to photo. And right now it says 7 by 5 inches, so I'm just going to make this, I want to do 9 by 6. I'm going to do horizontal. Probably you want to do horizontal because you're doing text. So I'm going to do 9 by 6 inches at 300, and we'll hit create, and it will boom, and good. Okay, so now I'm going to do is start bringing in my pictures into here to work on it, right? So what I want to do is make a text-based image, but I'm going to kind of do some stuff with it. So first I'm just going to go ahead and put like a background down there that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to go to File, Open, and I'm just going to grab the pictures I want to use. So I want to grab this picture and this picture and this picture. I don't remember which ones I was using before. We'll grab those three. Okay, I'm just going to grab those to start with, and then I might need to make some adjustments. Okay, so this one here is the one I'm going to use for my background. Just because I want something that's just kind of generically textured, so that I don't want it to be in the way of my text, but I need something behind it so it's not just black. I mean, you can do that too. But anyway, so I'm going to Control A for select all, then Control C for copy. I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to Control V for paste. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just immediately going to convert this. I'm going to rename it background too, so I know what it is. I'm just going to immediately convert it to a smart object, so that way I'm not dealing with, it not being a good size. And then I'm just going to hit Control T for free transform, or edit free transform. And I'm just going to, so it used to be if you held shift, that would make it constrained, but now not holding shift actually keeps it constrained, which you probably want to do. So I don't want this part in there because I think it's going to be more confusing. But I want to try and get, that's okay, we'll do it with that. Okay, yay. And then what I'm going to do on top of this is just add some adjustments. So we'll just do, I don't really care that much. I'm just going to do brightness contrast. So I'm going to take my brightness down, and I'm going to take my contrast down, take brightness down a little bit more, because I just want it to sit in the back. So we'll call that good. All right, and then just to have the adjustment, I'm just going to go to Filter, Blur, and I'll do a Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to, we'll go up to like that. Okay, and we'll call that good. All right, so now that's going to be, I'm just going to pull this up. That's going to be my background. So I think that looks fine. So I'm going to make a new layer here. Let's make sure it's above this, okay? Because the way these work is that anything that's under this gets affected by it. So for instance, if I were to draw something, if I put it underneath this, it will also be affected by it, okay? So it's like a separate layer in the stack. Okay, so we got a new one here. All right, so now what I want to do is this. I want to make my text. So I'm doing a message. All right, so I'm going to go to my text tool here. So horizontal type tool. And I'm going to go ahead and just make my text black for now. It doesn't really matter for what I'm doing here. And I'll just make it 96 and this. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to write obstacle, okay, and that looks great. I'm going to select it all, and then I want to adjust the text. So there's a bunch of different options. So you can see up here, I do have some options, right? I could change what the font is, just like you normally would, right? And then there's subcategories of the font. So you can see there's like Arrow, and some of them will have more than others. Like Arial is a very generic one, so there's a ton of options. The size, just leave that on sharp. Centered, left, right alignment, the color of the text. And then you can make it 3D. You probably don't want to do that. This might be something you might want to do. If you click on this, what it'll do is it'll warp the text to different shapes. So let's say I want to make it an arc, it will put it in an arc, which is kind of neat. And you can adjust how much the bend is and how much horizontal distortion there is. And then there's, so like you can do arc upper, right? So you can do, I think there's a flag one. There's all sorts of ones that you can do. So play around with those, play around with the settings. And so if you need to something to do that, then you can do that too, okay? I'm not going to use that, but that's there as well. Stay away from the 3D because I think it'll just be confusing for you, so leave that one alone. What was I going to do? Oh, so I want to adjust this. So what you can do is you go to Window, and then you go to Character. There is also Paragraph, but it doesn't give you any really options more than what you see up here anyway. But Character gives you quite a bit more, so I'm going to go to Character. And when I have Character, I also have Paragraph because I stuck it underneath earlier. When I have Character up here, it allows me to adjust a bunch of things. So you're going to notice that my words are pretty closely stuck together. The reason why is that I can adjust, so I'm just going to click, I don't know if I can adjust things like tracking, which that is this here, and what that does is it makes the words farther and closer apart. So if I go to, like, let's say 0, I do have to have it selected. I was hoping maybe it would do it anyway. If I go to 0, you'll see that's what it normally looks like. And you could go, so it'll spread them farther, right? But that does all words. So what was I at? I think it was 150, wasn't I? Maybe it was minus 125, we're going to say. Okay, but I want mine right on top of each other because I wanted to make this font look like an obstacle, right? So what I did is I chose a font that was a sans serif font, so it has no little wingdings on it. And I also chose a font that's thick because I'm trying to give that appearance of like it being structured. So things that are round will typically be more friendly. So if you think cartoon characters, right, like the round characters, they're non-threatening, right? They're cute. Things that are square are usually your heroes because those are typically like unmovable objects. So if you think like a building or a tree trunk, right, they've got a squarish kind of figure. It imposes strength, which is kind of what I wanted. And then things that are sharp, right, like acute and angle, those are usually your villains, right? So triangles and that sort of thing. So if you want something to look threatening, you do that kind of. Look for shapes that are more acute, okay? In my case, I'm just trying to make it look a little bit bolder. It's probably a little bit too round, but I don't really care. I'm just going with Arial. So anyway, I have tracking here. This is, I don't have multiple lines, but this has line height. And then there's also, what you might want to do, kerning. So what that'll do is that, let's say I have a word like this T, I want it to be closer. I can click right between them, and then where it'll by default say metrics. But what you can do is I could do like minus 75. And that will shove it over. That's the space between each individual letter. This is the space between the letters as a whole. So if you need to adjust it in any way, that's another way that you can kind of do it, right? So I'll do minus 50 there. And if I need one, like maybe this A is too close, I could take this and just do like 25, and now it's pushed over a little bit. So if you need to micro adjust the distance between your letters, you can do it that way as well. So that's why I brought the character up. There's also ways of doing like subscript and superscript, I think is what it is, right? Sub and super? I can't remember. But basically, putting like H2O, or 2O, or to the nth degree, that sort of stuff. And like, you can see, there's a bunch of options here. Hopefully you kind of know a little bit about text. We're going to talk about text in a later class. In DI2, we'll talk about text a little bit more when we do InDesign. But anyway, there's options there. You can play around with them. So put my text there. That's fine by me. I need to make it bigger because I want it to be more foreboding. So I'm going to switch to my select tool. Still have it selected here. I'm going to hit Control T. And I'm just going to pull it and just make it big like that, right? Boom. Okay. So now I've got text. I'm going to do a second line of text. Oop. Okay. And in this one, I'm going to put opportunity, and I'm just going to make sure I get it selected here, and Bookman Old Style. Okay. And let's go 0. That's too far apart. Let's do minus 75. That's a little too, minus 50. 50 looks good. Okay. I'm not going to micromanage it, but you can micromanage it as well. Okay. So now I have opportunity here, and then I have obstacle there, because behind every obstacle is an opportunity. I know, it's the cheesiest thing. But I needed a message, and I was like, oh, we're having a lot of problems with things, so this is what I came up with, so don't fault me. Okay, so anyway, I got this obstacle, but obviously it could look better. So what I'm going to do is I could make it a solid color. I could change the color. So at any time, if you need to get back to the text, you can click on the text tool itself and click on the text, and then you can click and drag over it, or you could just double click on it with the select tool, and that will also go into like the text mode. So either way will work. Back here, but I don't need to do that. What I'm going to do, so I could go back in there and then adjust the color here, but I'm not going to do that because I don't really want to. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use another new thing that's kind of non-destructive, and that's going to be a clipping mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my other image that I had. So I have two. I don't remember. Let's do this one, I guess. So I'm going to Control A, Control C, and then I'm going to, I want opportunity actually should be underneath this one. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to go above this one and hit Control V, so new layer, and we're just going to call this like, obstacle fill, which with one L apparently. Okay, so obstacle fill. And then what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just make this also, again, smart object. Now, I might like heal like these little nublets off, but we're just going to go with it because I don't want to spend a bunch of time on this. You're trying to do things. I'm trying to do things. Okay, what I can do, though, is I can take this and right-click, and we can make it a clipping mask. And what that's going to do is it's only going to show through in the object underneath it, which is neat because watch, with the select tool, I can move this around, and you can see it's basically only showing in the area underneath it. And now with this, I can go ahead and do other things, you know, like I can go to my my adjustment layers, and this is going to be useful for you as well. So I'm looking at this, and that color is not that great, so I'm just going to go ahead and do hue saturation, so I can basically, and I'm going to choose colorize, so that I can apply a color to it. Let's saturate a little bit more, and let's blue typically makes things look like they're structural, so I'm going to go blue. Now you're going to notice, like I said before, it affects everything underneath it, but there is a fix to this. It's the same thing that we just did. Right click on it and go create clipping mask. And now it's only going to affect the layer underneath it. So that way, that's how you fix if you have an issue where like you want it to apply to multiple things. That's how you fix it, okay? I'm going to come back to this one in a second. I'm just going to go right now to opportunity here. So on the opportunity, I'm just going to go ahead and just adjust it a little bit. I want to make it look like the shadow of it, basically, is what I'm thinking. So I'm going to hit Control T for free transform. But instead of just clicking on it, see how I get these arrows like this? Which just lets me generally scale it. If you hold Control or Command on a Mac, you can skew it. So I'm just going to go ahead and skew it like this. And then we'll just hit Enter, and that looks a little bit better. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to Filter, and I'm going to go ahead and blur it with a Gaussian blur. Okay. So now it's asking me, do I want to rasterize it? Which means, do I want to make it pixels, or do I want to convert to a smart object? I'd rather do smart object just because it doesn't have any, it'll be non-destructive. So I'm going to convert to smart object, and now I can adjust, and we'll call that good. And then I'm just going to take this, and now you see how you can see the stuff underneath it. But what I can do is I'm going to take this layer and make it multiply. And what multiply does is it basically, and then I'm going to take the opacity down. Like that. There we go. Like that. And now it looks like the shadow. But basically what multiply does is it only shows black, but it doesn't show white. And then if it's gray, it like half shows it, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay. I'm going to call that text good. I'm going to come back now to obstacle. And I want to make it just a little bit more oomph. Okay. So the thing that we haven't covered yet, and you can play with all these too, you know, play around with the adjustment layers, play around with the blending modes, things like that. One of the things that we didn't do yet, if you look, there's a couple of things down here, right? So we did this, and I did this. There's this, which we're going to cover next class. That's making masks, which we've been doing kind of in a way, but not really. And then there's this effects. So these are actually layer styles. So with this guy selected, click on the effects, and then just go ahead and click on blending options. I don't know why it's called blending options. That's kind of stupid. But basically, it gives you all the layer. Okay. But basically, it has these effects that you can apply to them, okay? And these are non-destructive, so you can just remove them as well. So there's bevel and emboss, there's stroke. So I'm going to go ahead and choose stroke. And what that's going to do is it's going to draw a line, hopefully at some point, around my, head cancel. I gotta put it on the obstacle, sorry. I put it on the wrong one. I had it on this, which doesn't do me any good. I got to make sure I'm on the actual obstacle. So let's do that again. Blending options. You can actually just click on those and they'll just apply, but I want to see the option. Oops, not this one yet. I'm going to go undo. I'm going to do stroke. So select stroke, and then I'm going to turn it on, and then I can see the options here. So I'm just going to make this smaller. We'll say like 16. And what it does is it draws a line. Basically, wherever it's opaque, it'll draw, so not transparent, it'll draw a line around it, creates a stroke, basically. I'm not sure what's going on underneath there. That was different. And I can change the color here. Actually, I'm going to leave it that color because it kind of matches the background. It's always a good idea that when you're doing things, you want to try and keep the colors, cohesive. So I actually don't like this blue at all. I might change that. And then you'll see there's other things here too, like inner shadow. So I can click on inner shadow, and that's a little bit strong. Let's take the opacity down or up, and then let's take the distance down and the size down. But you see it does a shadow on the inside. There's also, which we don't need, but there's drop shadow. So it'll do a drop shadow, maybe. It must just be really big or something. We don't need it anyway. And then inner shadow. And then there's other ones here too, like gradient overlay. What it'll do is it'll draw a gradient over top of the layer, but only on the parts that are the layer. So you can play around with these. There's glow, outer glow. There should be inner glow, isn't it? Yeah, there's inner glow. There's a bunch of them. So you could also, I could try bevel and emboss, which will do this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take the depth down a whole bunch. And then, oh, here we go. There's glass contour. Let's do this. Oh no, I don't like something more square. We'll go with that. But you can play around with these settings too. So basically, what's the depth of the thing that you're trying? So it'll make it look like it's like extruded towards you. That's what bevel and emboss does. So you can see them here, and there's other options and such. Good. So that's layer styles. I'm not going to go through all of them because honestly, just play with them, and then you'll get an idea of what they do. Because there's a bunch of settings in there that may or may not be helpful to you. So then we'll hit OK. Because I'll take this, and I don't really like that color. Let's go with that. Saturate a little bit more, and let's take the lightness down a little bit. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that is basically what we have. So you can see how kind of doing the abstracting in those photos will actually help in here too, because you can put those for your background image. You can see everything we did was non-destructive. I can change any of these elements in any way because I made sure that all my objects were smart objects so that they can be scaled and skewed without being damaged. I apply, I put on these the adjustment layers. We have these effects on here, so you can see this obstacle has basically these effects, which I can turn on and off if I don't like them. I can turn just the bevel off. I can turn just the stroke off, inner shadow off, whatever makes sense. Yeah, so that's what I want you to do. So it doesn't have to be as like corny, like this looks like it's a poster or something that I made, but it doesn't have to be as corny as this, but think of like a word or something that you want to emphasize, or it could be your last name, right? It could be like, let's say you're a film student, you could, have like Cone Productions, and put that up there and work with it. But the idea is I want you to kind of play around with text. I want you to play around with the layers, get a feel for what those are, okay? And just experiment, and then you might come up with something really interesting looking. All right, so good luck.